We are going to have such a fun talk today all about brain development in children, Cerebelly, which are these awesome little pouches that the creator of the company, Teresa Purzner, is going to be talking to us about. So got a lot of great questions about childhood brain development, nutrition to support that, and Teresa is going to talk to us all about that. Thank you so much for joining us to talk a little bit about just Cerebelly, of course, but also just the importance of nutrition when it comes to brain development in children. And I know you and I talked last week, but there were just so many interesting nuggets of wisdom that I think are really worth just re-mentioning, which I found personally just to be really interesting, which is that your baby's brain is 80% developed by the time that they're 3 years old, which is mind-boggling to me, especially on the nutrition angle, just because it shows you the importance of, making sure your kids get the proper nutrients that they need in their diet before they're 3 years old and then after as well, but just the importance of those first 3 years. Also that the brain cells that you have don't regenerate. So the brain cells that my daughter has at 10 months old is the same brain cells that she's going to have when she's 80, which I think is also really worth mentioning, and again talking about the importance of nutrition there, and then just a little bit more about the importance of all of the 16 key nutrients, which I want to talk more about just to start. What really made you want to start this company? Because you, like so many of us moms who end up in a grocery store and looking at labels, you want to get what's best for your child and what your kid's going to actually eat and like. But looking at the ingredients list can be really daunting and intimidating. No matter how, smart you are, you're very accomplished, obviously insanely smart, but it can be intimidating to look on the back of a box and to say, is this great for my kid or is this not? And then you actually decided to go and start a company. So can you talk to us a little bit about how Cerebelly came to be?
Sure. Yeah, of course. I'd love to. So as you know, my background is neurosurgery. And I've always been fascinated by early brain development. And it was for that reason I went down to Stanford really to study brain development very intensely for my PhD. And when I was there, as you said, I had my kids. And when I had my kids, all this knowledge I had about early brain development suddenly became so much more relevant because it was happening right in front of me. And I think one of the huge pressures that I felt was exactly what you're just talking about. It's the fact that so much of your brain development happens really in the first 18 to 24 months, right? I mean, it's doubling in size at 6 months, doubling again by 2 years, almost full adult size at 3, right? What else of your body? Yeah, 2/3 of your energy is being used just to build this brain. And so I thought this is this one in a lifetime opportunity to get things just right. Right. And my sort of taught me that there was 3 things that were critical for supporting early brain growth. One was genetics, so the parent. The second was the environment, so reading the right books, having the right toys, interacting them the right way, and the third was nutrition. And I would say, I had done neurosurgery, I studied a lot about cancer, especially early childhood cancer. I'd done this PhD in brain development, but I am not a nutritionist. And I came in this not knowing any more than any other mom when it came to nutrition. You just don't learn it in medical school. So I had that really daunting experience that so many parents have of going to the grocery store and looking at all these. I was so busy, pouches seemed like the right answer, and trying to find these 16 nutrients that I knew were so important. And I just flipped over pouch after pouch after pouch, dozens and dozens of pouches. And, I could only find maybe 3 of the 16. And so it seemed like there was huge gap between what I knew was so important during this small period of life and what you could actually just get from the grocery store. And while I had the background in terms of the neuroscience, and I had, I partnered up with these great nutritionists at Stanford, so I got the nutrition part under, solving that problem for just myself really wasn't enough. And so even though I was so crazy busy, my brother sort of came along and said, listen, Teresa, you have all this knowledge, you have all these great answers, you can't keep them for yourself, you have to make them more widely available. And it really was sincerely for that reason that I embarked on creating, my 5th job, Cerebelly. I had three little kids, right? Who has time?
I mean, you have 3 little kids, you're at Stanford, you're, neurosurgeon, there's so many different things there that you would think would make you want to say no, I'm good. Yeah. But then you actually went through and did it, which I love to talk about just because I think that it's so amazing when anyone, man, woman, whatever it is, says like, here's an idea, this space needs this, and I'm actually going to go through and, actually execute a product and a company and get it out into the hands of people because you saw a need and wanted to go ahead and do that. So I think that's, there are so many impressive things about your career, but just that specific part of it, and then doing that, of course, while you have 3 kids is a whole juggling act in itself. There are 16 obviously key ingredients that you were talking about, which I think is really important for parents to know when buying things for your kids. And we'll list the 16 of them just in case people wanted to know specifically, but I always find it helpful to just do like 3 things to look at when we're at a grocery store, because, especially in today's world with the world that it is, going into a grocery store, especially with kids, is chaotic, it's hectic, you kind of want to get in and get out. So can you explain to people like the 3 things that when you as a parent are going into the store, trying to look at this giant aisle of kid products, of whether it's pouches or bars or snacks, whatever it is, if you want to go and buy them, what are the 3 things that when you flip over a box and look at the ingredients that should be the first things that you can say whether or not this is a product that's good for your child's brain development or not?
Yeah, absolutely. So you said the first thing actually, which is flip it around. So the first thing is you go, look at all the beautiful colors and all the pictures, and then ignore them. And then really you want to look at 2 things. So first is the ingredient list. Look at what the first ingredient is. Most of them will be apple, pear, or banana. You don't want that. You want a vegetable. So almost any vegetable is better than no vegetable. So look for a vegetable as the first ingredient. That's the first thing. You can be really tricked. You'll have pouches that have spinach on the front. And I actually did this. I flipped it around. I looked at the iron content, and then I back calculated, okay, given the iron content, how much spinach is in this pouch? Some pouches will have 1 calorie of spinach. So it'll be a bunch of fruit and then a couple leaves of spinach. So again, look at the first ingredient. You want it to be vegetable. Then look at the nutritional label, and you'll find it's less confusing, unfortunately, than you would hope, because you're going to see zeros, except for carbs. So sugar and salt, you'll see high numbers. And then for the nutritional content, usually you'll see a bit of A, a bit of C, both great. You definitely want both of those, and a lot of zeros. So if I were to make it really simple, rather than thinking of all 16, just look for things where the nutritional panel has a lot of things that aren't zeros, and really the higher number, the better in general. Overall, I guess my third thing will be protein and fat are definitely better than sugar. Okay. And you'll find if you look at unsweetened whole fat Greek yogurt, you'll see a nice amount of fat, not a lot of empty carbs. So I think those would be my 3 hints.
So when we look around, because obviously we think that if we flip a pouch over or a product over and it says apples or pears or bananas is one of the first key ingredients, you're saying that that's not something that we want. Can you explain that?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of parents understand that you don't want to be giving apple juice to your kid all the time. I think that's sort of in our knowledge. I mean, apple puree is not that much better. It's still just, concentrated apple. So whether it's apple puree, you're kind of using empty carbs. And people think because it's a fruit and because it's not sugar added, suddenly it's okay. And certainly added sugar is much worse. Like you don't want added sugar. But if all you're seeing on the nutritional panel is apples and sugar and no nutritional content, your kid's not getting a lot from that. So really you want a vegetable as the first ingredient.
Okay. That's helpful to know, just because I think that there are, especially with baby food, I've noticed fruit is a big part of the ingredients that are in things, just because it's yummy. Even as adults, like if you try any of the pouches and something has it's a blend of something with greens in it, and then they add in like an apple, it tastes so much better. So I think especially, and I want to talk about this also because you and I spoke about this, but also a lot of the questions that came in from parents with children is dealing with picky eaters. How to get in the food and the nutrients that you want to get in to help your child's brain development, be aware of it, make it something that you're conscious of, and also be mindful of the fact that most kids, including my daughter, are very picky eaters, and you don't want to just be saying okay, here's a puff, or here's a piece of bread or pasta, but you want to be able to get in all these ingredients. But can you talk to us a little bit about giving advice for parents who are dealing, like myself, with picky eaters?
Yeah, that's something I can relate to completely. So right. two of them are very easy eaters and one is extremely picky. So, I mean, the first thing I'll say, and this is not helpful to people who are already in the situation, but starting very early on with vegetable dense diets and then introducing sweeter things later on sort of helps prevent the pickiness, because it gets harder. It definitely gets harder to give them, you know, broccoli later on if they've never had broccoli early on. Right. The second, really be patient, try over and over and over to give the vegetable. And this is all great advice that I got, and none of it worked for my one kid who was super picky. For that kid, to be honest, I just get creative. You know, if I'm making a pasta with pasta sauce, I will squeeze in, you know, one of our pouches into the pasta sauce to have it as part of it. I bake a lot. So there's a couple, and I don't want to keep talking about my pouches, but you can use any, you know, vegetables in general. But any kind of dense vegetable puree, which is what Cerebelly is, I will bake with them. So I have muffin recipes that take
smart.
7 pouches of this super nutritionally dense puree into the muffins. And then even my super picky eater will just wolf down those muffins. And to be honest, if they're not eating the muffin by themselves, you put a little chocolate chip on top and they're loving it, right?
I know. That's actually such a clever way to go about getting in the nutrients that I didn't even think about, is really just taking one of your pouches and squeezing it into a muffin mix and give. That's very smart. That's why you're in the role that you're in. That's great. Okay. So that's a really helpful thing. I'm definitely going to try that part of it. Another big question that we got from people when it came to just brain development is breast milk, the whole subject of breast milk, breastfeeding. I'm still breastfeeding. Obviously I've introduced solids as well, which I've talked a lot about, just like the journey of solids and having a picky eater. But also, you know, is there a difference when it comes to brain development and being aware of your child's brain development with, you know, we hear so much about the difference between breast milk and formula.
Yeah.
But is there anything that we should be aware of when it comes to a child that's been breastfed or is still being breastfed and having solids versus a child who wasn't breastfed and is on formula? Like, are the nutrients, is that going to be different at all?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I really considered as well when I was trying to figure out, because I tried to breastfeed all my kids for as long as I could. And, you know, I was working practical component, and honestly, you can only help so much. Yeah. I'll do it. But it's you know, it's not the best, it's not the most enjoyable thing, at least for me. So breast milk is amazing. And I think there are very few people who will disagree with the idea that, you know, as long as you can do it, you should. And of course, the mother's mental health is extremely important. So should you put yourself in a position where you're pumping all the time and you're feeling like really anxious and frenetic and you know, how do I get one more bottle? No, you shouldn't do that. I think the mother's peace of mind and presence and emotional availability is so important. But you know, all that being said, as long as you can breastfeed, you know, that's wonderful. Breast milk does change with time. So breast milk at 12 months is different from breast milk at 6 months. And there's particular that become less available with time. So things like vitamin D, some of the B vitamins, often iron can be a little bit deficient. If you look overall at children, you know, older infants and young toddlers that are breastfed in North America, there's things like vitamin E and choline that they tend to be a little more deficient in. So just being wary of that. And if you are a vegetarian or a vegan mother, B12 certainly can be low in breast milk even earlier on. So something to keep in mind, finding sources of B12. And honestly, when it comes to that, I'm not a nutritionist. When it comes to that, non-meat sources of B12, because meat's an obvious source, you just Google it. Look for vegetable B12 and find what pops up. And that's
I mean, I think it's also helpful to know that I think for Cerebelly and the muffin recipe that I'm going to try, these are all things that I think parents can feel comfortable and confident giving their child, knowing that obviously when you created them, that their brain development and just overall brain health was at the top of your mind, which I think is such a relief to parents, because, you know, dealing with a picky eater, it's like you want to get it in where you can for them, but also, you know, I'm breastfeeding, and I actually did a panel on breast milk just to see like what you might need to be introducing more into your child's diet, especially as solids are a part of it. But all of these the products that we're talking about, and also just the key ingredients that you want in your child's diet, however you can get them in, it's really helpful to know that they're just kind of something that you don't even really have to think about when using your Cerebelly products, and that you can just know that your kids are being able to have their brain development be at the top priority list of this line. And I love the idea of also just being able to get creative with these products in a totally different way, which is just adding them into a pasta, or just finding ways to do things at an easier way. Because while you have 3 kids and are at Stanford and doing all these different things, for a lot of parents that are overwhelmed by one job or one thing, that they can have this as being an easy part of their daily routine, I think is really helpful, and also empowering for moms and dads to be able to know what it is you need to pay attention to and focus on, before they hit that 3-year mark.
Yeah, I mean, I could not agree more. And the smart bars that we came out were largely motivated on my part by my picky eater. The fact that it was so hard. I think another big component is eating. I'm half French, and eating and the social component and the bonding that happens over dinner and the discussions. I mean, that's a really important time for me growing up, and it's an important time that I'm trying to convey to my children. I don't want every dinner to be a battle. I don't want it to be an argument. I don't want it to be, eat this, eat this, eat this. And so I always felt if my kid was getting, 1 or 2 of those smart bars a day, I knew that at least the nutritional component was covered. And while I still, of course, cook healthy and try to create the right dietary habits in my kids, I no longer felt that pressure to make dinner time a battle. And it was now a time for bonding and a time for talking and growing together as a family. And so I completely agree. I think that loving part of being a parent and being, and cooking for your family is just so nice. And not having that, not feeling like you're failing because you're trying to focus on that it's a huge relief for me as well.
Since we've been talking about the fact that you have so many different things going on, and especially when starting this company, would there be any, because this is something that we've talked about in a bunch of different episodes of BDA Baby, which is just the amount of things that parents have on their plate, moms have juggling a lot. There are a lot of different things going on, and you have more than the average person has going on as far as, jobs and roles and things you're doing, and still manage to create a company and have it be very, of course, conscious of brain development for children, which is incredible. Is there anything that you would say to people who, might be getting overwhelmed, or might think that they also have a great idea like you had and want to actually go through with it and create a company, but don't really know where to begin?
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking. And it's not one I thought I would do. I would not say that by nature I'm an entrepreneur by any stretch. I'm a scientist and I'm a clinician. And it really was the fact that I saw this huge problem, which was the lack of nutrition in shelf-stable baby food. The discomfort of knowing that and seeing that was so great that I had to solve the problem, and solving the problem was creating Cerebelly. So I would say I wasn't a business person by nature. What I will definitely say is, if you do embark on starting a company, which is a huge undertaking, it is almost like having another kid. It's this whole aspect of your life that you have to care for and look after, but also give boundaries, and say, there's part of me, I am in my mind always first and foremost a mother. And that to me is the top priority. It really is. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be there for every moment I want to be, but it has to be the foundation on which I build everything else. And so I think creating boundaries and then building a team of people that you love working with, that you enjoy being around, and that you can trust, and that you can then let do their thing. I think that's so critically important is the team building part, and then trusting your team to know what to do, what they need to do, and just finally being very, very honest with them from the very start and saying, this is what I can give you, this is what I cannot give you. And if you're starting to infringe on this period of time that I consider family time, I can't give that to you. I know how much you want it. I know how reasonable it is for you to ask me for it, but I'm not going to give it to you. And I think setting that tone from the very beginning, and then just being, when I recruit someone in, they're aware of what they're being brought onto and they're choosing to join it anyway. I think that has been really important for creating an overall balance in my life.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I think it's also, it's a learning curve. It's also understanding that, like, as your kids get older, as you add in more kids, those priorities change and your time changes, of course. So, being flexible with that. I want to go back to the breast milk conversation with solids and also with brain development in children. There were a couple people that asked about the use and benefits of breast milk when you're introducing solids and when you have access to different kinds of nutrition and foods for your child, how beneficial breast milk is in that time period and also after the 1 year mark.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think that's something that, out of the brain development part, I think that nutritionists can probably give you an even better answer than I can. My own take on it and my own approach was I really did it as long as I could, as long as I felt I was comfortable, until it started creating a significant impact on my overall, happiness of life.
Yeah.
Continue to try it. So I think if you can incorporate it, there's things that you have in breast milk that simply can't be found anywhere else and can't be made artificially. So the longer you can do it, the better. But if you wanted to know for your specific situation and you want to go through your specific diet, your specific child, the best thing really is to talk to your pediatrician or your family doctor and say, this is my situation. What do you think in terms of continuing versus not? It's such an independent choice, and there's so many nuances to each person. What I would say is I don't think you'll ever make the wrong decision. I don't think there's ever such a terrible decision that, your child's going to really suffer tremendously from whatever path you go. So be confident in yourself and what you believe is right for your kid. And then, enjoy the journey. I think that's so important. Enjoy it. They're so awesome, these little kids.
Yeah. No, it is so true. It's definitely important to also feel empowered in whatever decision that you're making for yourself and for your family. We were talking a little bit about just the important things that you can look back when you flip a product over and look at the ingredients, and you want to see a vegetable first, which is such a great little kind of takeaway for people who want to improve their child's nutrition when it comes to brain development. Are there specific things that if you flip a product over and see are in the list of ingredients that are kind of filler foods to be aware of, aside from the fruit being number one? But are there things that, because I think, especially as a new mom, you hear all these articles, especially with the recent, heavy metals being found in some baby foods and things like that. Are there anything that like maybe you would say to people, if I look at the ingredients and this is in there, definitely don't buy it?
I think added sugar. I think if someone put added sugar in their product, they have lost perspective on what they're trying to do. And you should just, not only that product, but I would even consider other products in the same line. If you're adding sugar to baby food, you're just not making baby food for the right reason. So I think to me, it's a hard no. In terms of specific ingredients, even fruit, I think, as you said, there needs to be, it has to taste delicious. And so even our pouches are, but there's definitely a fruit as the second or third ingredient to level out and to make it more delicious. Specific ingredients, especially with the heavy metals, a lot of attention's been put on heavy metals, and it's absolutely an issue. And it was kind of mind-blowing to me that it's not regulated in North America. It is in other countries, but it's not here. Going to change. Will help with that change at Cerebelly. But there are certain ingredients that people will Google and say, okay, what's high in heavy metals? And they'll say, okay, sweet potato is. There's a tendency to then say, I'm not going to eat sweet potatoes. And I would say that you should not take that approach. We thought really hard about including sweet potatoes in our lines, well before all this heavy metal became news, because we were so conscious of it from the very beginning. And there has been large international organizations of nutritionists who have debated it. And they've universally come on the side of, sweet potato is so nutritionally dense that the benefit of it outweighs the heavy metal content problem. That being said, what you do not want to do is have only sweet potatoes. So what you definitely want to do is you want to mix it up. So you're having a little potato here, and then carrots there, and then, dark leafy greens and peas in this. So I think that the best thing you can do is try not to have just one ingredient over and over and over. Try to mix it up. And the rule of thumb I give, really things that have really rich color. So like kale or, pumpkin or sweet potato, or, a dark carrot or something like that. Try to find rich colored ingredients, and then as many different colors as you can over time, not in one meal, but over time. And in that way, you'll get all the different nutritional benefits. And also you'll sort of buffer out any problem with one specific ingredient.
Yeah, that's probably, I think, obviously everything in moderation for babies and also for adults. But I also, the idea of also having that family time around a dinner table, to go back to that, I also noticed, and I don't know if this is even like a thing for parents, and maybe parents who are watching or who will watch this might be able to chime in, but whenever I fed my daughter, not when I was eating or my husband was eating or my mom or whoever is around, whenever she sees other people also eating, she's more inclined to be trying different foods and eating different things that I don't think she typically would be eating, you know, not being around or in the presence of food or kind of that family meal dynamic and setting. So I think that that's also, that has been a game changer for me. And then I'm also really excited to be trying these new and sneaky ways of squeezing a pouch into some sort of a recipe. My mom, when I was growing up, I was a picky eater. Shocking that my daughter is, but she used to stick all of my fruits or my vegetables and my protein in yogurt because she would like try and hide it from me because I was such a picky eater, and she would just try and like stick it in that way so I can try and get in some sort of protein. But I think that the route of putting it in a muffin mix, like you're suggesting, is much more appetizing.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll hopefully one thing that I do is much like your mom. What my kids had almost every day at daycare, I had a little jar, those little mason jars, and I would put some oat for texture, or oatmeal or whatever, then whole fat Greek yogurt, then a stewed berry or like stewed blueberries, or you know, with some sweet potato mixed in, then crushed up sunflower seeds or chia or something, and then a little bit of cinnamon on top. And you got all this nutrition, but it tastes actually really yummy. So
that sounds delicious.
Mom, that's the way to do it. Sneak it in.
I mean, it's incredible also to me that you're able to do all of this while doing all the variety of different things that you're doing. It's like, I can just bake later. I can do this. And then I'm listening to you talk about baking and making these little things. I'm like, this is very impressive. You're able to manage your time very well. But it's inspiring. I mean, I'm so grateful for all these nuggets of wisdom that you shared, and also just your story of explaining how you came to create this product, which is awesome. The bars that you guys have, which I can't wait to try when more teeth come in with my daughter. But just being able to be aware of the importance of this and know how important brain development is and brain health with your child, especially before they reach that age of 3 years old, is so important to be talking about and to be spreading awareness about. We hear a lot about our brain health as adults, and my mom talks about it a lot because she's very involved in work with Alzheimer's. But I think the importance of talking about it on infant level and a child's development level is so awesome, and really has been eye-opening for me as a new mom. So thank you so much for taking time to do that. And we'll make sure to list all the information in the caption below for anybody who wants to know more about Cerebelly, and also just the 16 key ingredients and nutrition in general.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been a total pleasure, and you're amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, thank you for being here, and I can't wait to try this muffin mix. I'm going to make it today. I'll let you know. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.